A lot of people don't want to change. Number one, they don't want to change their project management type. But number two, when you're developing software, that's your baby. That's your thing, right? But we are adapting as a company for our clients.
The definition of insanity, right, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result. Well, that'll kill a software, period. It'll kill a company, period.
If you're afraid to fail, you're not going to try. And you have to try, because you won't find what works just by hitting that one thing.
How's it going? This is Jay and Michael here on the IT Directors Podcast with our guy, James. James, what's going on?
Oh, it's been a good day thus far. I'm glad to be here. Thank you for having me.
Yes. Hello. Look, hey, we are so excited about this episode. We are talking about adaptive software development. And look, hey, you know what? What a better guy to do it, Michael, than James.
This is the guru right here. Not only does he embody the beard, but the knowledge of software, adaptive software development. I'm feeling it.
I'm not sure what's taken longer to grow, the beard or the knowledge, but yeah, thank you.
Simultaneously, nonetheless.
Yeah,
that's right.
So James, just for our listeners and viewers, James is our Director of Software Development here at Clearwinds Technology. And man, this guy is super talented and just super knowledgeable. You have a fantastic team. And I'm excited for this episode because I really think our listeners and viewers are going to gain a lot of knowledge from this. So we're going to kick it off. James, just tell us a little bit about what your role is, what you do, and your background and how you got into this role.
Yeah, no, background about how I got into this role and just even software development as a whole was I needed a job. And
that's always a good thing.
It does help. It does help put food on the table. And so in thinking through like what really is going to be around for a long time, the idea was definitely given of, hey, website development is going to be around for a long time. And of course, as the technology has increased and changed along the way, it went from not just websites, but web apps, which was not at that point in time. So we're talking over a decade ago. At that point in time, web apps wasn't really a thing that was on the horizon. So I've kind of grown with the role and with the industry from when I started and further into where I am now. So it's taken a while, and it's been a wild ride along the way to learn all these things. But it's been a fun one.
Man, that is fantastic. I mean, you talked about web apps and just the transition and the how technology has grown in the development role, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that leads into what we're wanting to talk about, Michael. Kind of this like the big picture, how technology never stands still. You know what I mean? And if you've been around technology, we're doing this podcast for IT directors, right? To network, to help them gain knowledge. But technology really never stands still. And in the programming world, James, that has never been more prevalent than right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. It changes fast. And sometimes it can be overwhelming.
Oh, look, I can imagine, so just being in IT for many years myself, just seeing how software has radically changed.
Oh, yeah.
We have AI, everybody AI, all these buzzwords, but software has just grown so much over the last 5 years, for web development and all these things. But hey, we got some questions that we want to ask you, and Michael's going to get us kicked off here and talk about some of these things. But I'll let Michael fire our first question at you.
Yeah, well, and even while we're going too, my thoughts even go to, I'm curious, what do you do to stay on top of those trends and stay in front of that? You said it's overwhelming, but what do you actually do? How do you stay in front of the trends? What's your process?
Yeah, I read a lot all the time and am constantly doing market research, all of this. So really, for that to be what it is, I have a really great team.
Mm-hmm.
And so being able to have a good team on board and being able to manage them and then being able to stay ahead of the trends, make sure we're heading in the right direction for our products, making sure that it is actually serving people, but also having some form of anticipation of what's coming next is a huge part of that. So if I'm not really looking forward to something, then I'm constantly playing catch up. And that's really the goal is how can you look forward rather than just playing the catch up game? Because the catch up game is the overwhelming part.
Mm-hmm.
But once you get up to a place and you're up to speed and you spend time, like I said, a lot of reading, a lot of video watching, this sort of thing, then you've digested a lot of stuff. Then you can begin to anticipate what's coming up next.
Okay. No, that's. I think you've got to stay in front of it, because if you don't, and if it's one thing to perfect your skill and your trade, but if you stay in that moment, someone else is going to pass you.
Oh yeah.
And I think we end up seeing that. So I think in all of these different areas, it's like, hey, how are you growing? Like, how are you learning? How do you continue to sharpen your own skill set? And kind of one of the questions we're talking about, like, hey, rigid project management. What's the problem? What is rigid project management? What's the problem with that?
Yeah. So the idea of rigid project management isn't necessarily called that, right? No one wants to be called "you're rigid."
Yeah, that sounds bad. When you asked that, I was like, man, James does not come to mind as rigid, right? That's a great question.
So the idea is really applying rigid standards to various types of project management, and so it's really more of seeing the framework and identifying, hey, is this really set in stone? Is there a set in stone process for each thing that you're doing, and what does that look like? And so there's several different frameworks that are more rigid than others, and then there's some that are far more agile than others. And so when you're talking about rigid project management, you're talking about things that are very set, and there's a process that you have to follow every single time. If you step out of the process, then you're seen as even stepping outside of the project. And so that's really what we're talking about when it comes to this rigid aspect. Traditional, and this is probably a better term and probably a little bit more palatable, but traditional project management is much more rigid. You sit down, you try to plan out everything that you could possibly think of is coming, and then you fit those into neat little boxes of, in line, this is how we're going to tackle this, and then you do it. And regardless of feedback, regardless of understanding, it's like, this is the project that we put into place. We're going to follow this, and it's not going to move. In certain industries, that is exactly how you want to do things. So this isn't a one size fits all solution, right? So in anything that you're literally moving physical objects, and there's logistics about moving physical things, a rigid project management is probably really key for success. Because there's already a ton of logistics that are going to this, and you're doing the same thing. You're moving things from point A to point B, and then you're installing those things there. You want a rigid project management. So that's actually a really good thing for that scenario. The problem comes when you're trying to apply that to fast evolving technology and the landscapes that we have today. That's where it gets hard.
Yeah, I can appreciate having a measuring stick and knowing, hey, this is what we're doing. This is how I know I'm meeting my objectives, my goal, my different stages, and those types of things. But yeah, if all the other variables are constantly shifting and outgrowing your measuring stick at that point, well, then you can find yourself in a problem.
Oh, for sure. And quickly. Yeah.
100%. And so this takes us right into, from the rigid project management, right, to what we're talking about, adaptive software development. So we talked about, the rigidness and how you have to be agile. So what does adaptive software development mean, James? Like, what does it mean to you?
Yeah, this gets into more of a philosophy behind how you do things. And the idea for adaptive software development is an agile mindset. When you think agile, think flexible. You're able to really make changes on the fly and be able to do things. And agile and Scrum, they are tightly woven. They're built off the top of one another. I really like Scrum a lot. It was a way in which when I was introduced to Scrum and therefore Agile, so to keep these things together in some respects, I was like, this is the way to do it. This is so.
And hey, tell us even what Scrum is.
Yeah, so Scrum is you would start at the beginning of, let's say, this particular week, this iteration, and in your project planning, you meet together, you go over the tasks. Tasks are assigned out, and then you work through this, and then you would come back together for a retrospective. Sometimes people do this, especially for larger companies. They'll actually do these things every day. So it's a 15-minute meeting in the morning, 15-minute in the afternoon. That's kind of your bookends of your day. Others will do that by a week basis. And then others still will do that even further out. And you get too much further out past like 2 weeks, and it's not as helpful of a framework. But it's really taking extreme ownership of what you're doing. It's making sure that the way that you're doing it is keeping change in mind. And that's hence the agile thing. So you can really pivot well. Adaptive software development has a different approach in some respects and a similar approach in other respects. So it is meant to be agile. It's meant to change fast. But there's an accepting of risk and that things just simply won't happen like you plan, which in the technology world, that's all the time.
Which that's real life.
So that's real life.
Every day, right, in our IT world.
Yeah, exactly.
Hey, that's every day in parenthood, man.
Yeah. Oh,
like
sure.
you don't know what's
Absolutely.
happening.
Yes.
Like there's yogurt on the walls in the morning. Like, man, you don't know what's happening.
That's right. That's right. So it feels sometimes when you're doing software development and you're trying to work through problems, it feels like a child sometimes. Random things pop up and I wasn't expecting that at all, and there's no reason why it should have happened. So that is a huge thing. So the idea is to speculate and really, I like to use the phrase anticipate when it comes to this.
Yeah.
And I didn't even realize adaptive software development as a framework and a philosophy even existed until very recently. And then as I was kind of doing Scrum, it felt a little boxy for me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not crazy boxy, but it felt a little bit too much for me and my own personality. And so I kind of adapted it and used the Scrum Agile mindset and kind of made it fit for how I typically like to lead, how I want to lead. I took what I felt like was really strong from that, and then I applied it. And then as I was talking even about this thing, somebody asked me, "Hey, are you familiar with adaptive software development?" I'm like, "No, I should look this up." And I look it up and I read it and I say, "This is exactly what I do."
Yeah.
This actually fits a lot of the problems that I had personally. Not saying Scrum isn't good. It works for hundreds of Fortune 500 companies. They are doing amazing with using Scrum. It's super, super helpful. But it just didn't fit me 100%. And so I prefer, rather than, and get it back to adaptive software development, rather than speculate, I like to use the word anticipate. So I really seek to anticipate what what might come up. But again, in the anticipation, I know things aren't going to go like I want.
Mm-hmm.
Things are not going to fit together. We're going to have maybe extra meetings that week because there's a client that we have to step into and help, and there's kind of a crisis mode here, and it throws off our planning here. Or, even within the idea of software development, one of the key things that we talk about all the time, and is a core part of our products, is customer driven. So we want to be customer driven. Well, if we're customer driven and we have this massive roadmap that has no flexibility in it, and then we get customer feedback, and that feedback throws off our product roadmap, what are we going to do?
Yeah.
And so, you adapt. So you speculate, you go, hey, there's uncertainty involved in the project. I'm going to own the fact that there's uncertainty, and I'm not going to let it throw me off.
Man, James, as you were talking about that, I'm going to give our listeners and viewers, Michael, a real world example. So just yesterday, I was on a call with James about this very thing, software, what we're talking about, adaptive software development and the management skills and the project management around that. So James is very unique for our listener and viewer in the software development role of he is not real rigid. Most software developers and programmers, they're very rigid. When they write applications, they want to be, they don't want to change, right? Because they're programmers. They write things and they think, okay, this is the way it's got to be. So, Jane, we had a call, right, and was giving you feedback from my role as an IT director and what I would like to see in a software tool that we've developed in Clearwinds. And James, you used this very same framework about being adaptive, because you took you didn't say, well, God, come on, guys, no, it don't do this. This is not what it's going to do. You're like, hey, I like this. That's great. We haven't thought about that. That is being agile.
Yeah.
And that's how, I think that's why you and your team has been very successful, and why the product that we're developing, School Manager, is such an adaptive tool for our end users, right?
Yeah.
Because you're taking in all these different things, and in which you started down the runway, it's kind of buried in different.
Oh no, it's different more than you realize.
Yeah.
Because of the feedback that we've gotten, we've pushed back entire chunks of where we thought we were going to be growing into with School Manager in particular. And we've pushed it down. Now it's still on the roadmap because we know we want to do it, and we know people are asking for it. But what people are asking for right now is different than what we thought they were. And so hearing it, we got to do something. And so we got to pivot.
I think that flexibility is key. I think that flexibility is why you can continue to grow, because it's one thing to be so centered and focused on whatever your deliverable is that you miss all the different the feedback and what's taking place that can actually help you get to a better place overall. But it's that aspect of being forward thinking, trying to anticipate. And I think that allows you to roll with the punches, roll with the challenges, those types of things, and continue to build something that can be a much more effective tool.
Oh, 100%. And James, I think you embody, the adaptive software development and the management tool around there, right? So from an IT director's perspective and someone that was been on the customer side and now it's on the client side, helping our customers, I see both sides. And it's very interesting to see that, because a lot of people don't want to change. Number one, they don't want to change their project management type, right?
Sure.
It's ABC. It's hard. But number two, when you're developing software, that's your baby. That's your thing, right? You don't want to no, I wrote it to be this, but we are adapting as a company for our clients.
That's right.
And I think that's why software companies that have thrived, they're using this methodology, right?
No, for sure.
And those that are not, they're not thriving. You have AI, you have all these different tools that you got to be able to adapt. You got to be agile. You got, look, you have in life in general, you have to be agile, right? You can't just go one path, And so, as I sat in on the meeting with you yesterday, I was thinking, because I knew we were recording our podcast today for our listeners and viewers, and I thought, this is incredible. This is exactly what we're talking about tomorrow, And so look, you were talking about adapting, learning, being agile, and how important learning is, James, for you as the director of our development team, but also your staff. Can you kind of expound on that?
Yeah. So one, and this is something I think is important for a software development team in the learning thing, is you actually need to set aside time each week to learn as well. So if my team isn't setting some time aside for that, then it probably won't get done, because everything seems to take precedent over that. So each one of the team members has different ways in which they like to learn. They have different resources that they prefer. Really, the thing is, make that a part of your weekly schedule and then actually learn. I'm reading stuff all day long, constantly reading things all day long. I'm doing a bunch of research. I'm trying to figure out problems and then really also anticipate future problems. So I like to see the landscape of where things just stand as is, and then see, well, what are some upcoming things that it looks like this is taking off, and then research it and see, is it actually going to take off? And I've been really blessed in a lot of different ways to have that forward looking, just really keyed in, and it actually does very much so happen. I've seen companies start small, and we've used some technologies that they have provided and that they really champion, and then they continue it, and it grows into some pretty big stuff along the way.
I think that aspect of lifelong learner, like I love that phrase.
Oh, 100%.
But no, I think it's key. And I think, man, even if you take 3 to 5 minutes in the morning, like, hey, if there is some nugget that there's a ton of newsletters you can subscribe to in different fields and different areas. And hey, if you take 3 minutes, even if it's 3 minutes right when you get there, you're sharpening yourself. You're getting the juices flowing, and you're in a much better position to respond and proactively tackle what's in front of you.
Yeah, for sure. And the aspect of kind of weekly coming together and speaking about what we've learned, because we ask 3 main questions at the end of every week. Hey, what went well, what didn't go so well, and what did you learn from it? And so it's really the idea, that's a forward facing aspect. What are we going to do now that we've learned this for next week? We don't want to repeat the same things.
Yeah.
The definition of insanity, right? It's so popular, is doing the same thing over and over again, expecting a different result.
Yeah.
Well, that'll kill a software, period. It'll kill a company, period. Any of this sort of stuff. So learning and vocalizing that even to one another, to the point where we've celebrated failures. And that sounds so weird. Good. Every time I say it, it sounds weird. And
good.
people like, what do you mean?
That's where you learn. That's where you learn.
That's exactly
in life,
right.
If you're afraid to fail, you're not going to try. And you have to try, because you won't find what works just by hitting that one thing.
That's right.
So, no, that's good. And it's the same 3 questions. I asked 2 out of the 3 the same. But I say, and this is what I do. Like, hey, what's worked well, what hasn't, and where's my room for growth?
Mm-hmm.
And those are the three questions.
And that's the key, the room for growth, right? Both
Yeah.
of you guys mentioned that. And as a division lead, you got to be willing to accept your failures and say, hey, what did I learn from that? How do we grow from that?
Oh, yeah.
So being rigid is, what, we're going to do this project this way. We don't really care our failures or our successes, but this is how we're going to do it.
That's right.
And sometimes, you do have to have that rigid mindset, but we're talking about the adaptive software development mindset. And I think it exemplifies what we do as a whole and as a culture in our company, but especially what you're doing in our software team. So, as we close this episode, I mean, I think this is going to be a great episode for our IT directors because number one is they're going to learn they can adapt. Things don't always go as planned.
That's right.
And if you've been in technology more than 3 weeks, you're going to learn things don't always go as planned.
Yeah.
But in the software development world, if you want to be relevant and if you want to stick around, I mean, with AI, I mean, I have an 11-year-old that can develop applications that would have used to taken me weeks to do by using, some of the language learning modules and stuff. And so, we have to learn to adapt. And it's so refreshing to see from my level how we do that as an organization, and in particular in our software team.
Yeah.
So, and I think our IT directors are going to really gain a lot from this, especially if they have a developmental team. You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
Because you nailed it, James, and Michael talked about it too. With learning to accept some of those failures, learn from them, adapt, and cultivate your staff around that, right? And celebrate the wins and celebrate the losses, that's how we grow in life. So I think we have a lot of great takeaways for our IT directors on this episode. And Michael and I are just pumped to have you on here, James.
Yes, sir.
Great episode. So look, everybody go follow us on LinkedIn, go follow us on Instagram, go follow us on Spotify, IT Directors Podcast, powered by Clearwind Studio here. And just a fantastic episode. We thank everyone for listening and joining today. And this is Michael and Jay, and we'll be back next week. Hey, thanks for joining us today on the IT Directors Podcast. We're so glad you joined us. Look, go follow us on all social media platforms. The IT Directors Podcast, powered by Clearwinds. And look, if you want more information, check out our website, clearwinds.net. We're going to have show notes, special guest bios. We're going to have reels. Our marketing team has done a fantastic job. Go check this out. We're so thankful that you joined us today.